Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have Ike Devji with me here today. Ike has over 20 years of experience devoted exclusively to asset protection planning for a national client base. He helps protect over $8 billion in personal assets for thousands of business owners, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, physicians, executives, and other high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. He's the founder and managing attorney of Arizona Wealth Law. And I could go on. Wow, this thing goes. Anyway, welcome to the show, Ike. We have lots to talk about.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thanks for sharing some time with me this morning.
Excellent. So, you've been in Arizona for most of your life, but when did you start branching outside of Arizona for your asset protection business?
Well, what we do is fairly specialized in terms of our practice, and it's the only thing we do, right? So, we have a national reputation at this, and people have been calling us from around the country for many years since I started.
But it started local, and then it grew through referrals and reputation?
Yes and no. So obviously, I started practicing in this area locally, and I manage a leading national asset protection firm, which I'm still counsel with. That firm had a local presence, but was already doing business all over the country. And we still get, folks who call me and my partners from every state. We have literally clients in every state.
Okay. Well, I think I should back up. We should start with what is asset protection, right? And estate planning and how they're different.
Sure. That's a great question. And it's an important baseline question that many investors misunderstand. So I think the easiest way to explain it to a consumer is the difference between asset protection and estate planning. Both are vital, both are very important, and they work together. But estate planning is primarily death planning, right? Who's in charge of your assets at the end of your life? Who gets them? When do they get them? Who gets what? How are they distributed? All of those very important details. Asset protection is how do we protect those assets from your liabilities during your lifetime? And unfortunately, traditional estate planning in the form of a revocable living trust or a family trust that hopefully your well-advised listeners have in place does not provide any asset protection or creditor protection, right? So you have to plan for while you are alive, and then you have to plan for the end of your life. And most people only plan for their death and not for their life and their success.
Okay.
So asset protection is several different things. It's legal planning. It's the right kinds of insurance to the right amount. It's tax planning. It's estate planning, and it's financial planning, right? Because if we have somebody who makes a bunch of money and they invest it poorly and they don't have counsel from somebody like you, there's a chance for loss. If we have somebody who's been phenomenally successful and they're fortunate enough to have an estate tax exposure and we don't plan against that, that's a loss. If we have a doctor who goes out, builds a fabulous net worth, gets into a frivolous lawsuit for some reason and has a huge loss that we could have put barriers in place again, that's a loss. So it's a combination of lots of different things that work together. My end of that is the legal planning.
Okay, excellent. That's super, super valuable and important stuff. One thing, just to double click on an example or maybe a misconception that people sometimes I hear is that people think, oh, well, I have my stuff in a trust, so it's safe. You can't sue the trust. The trust didn't hit you, with my car. I hit you with my car, so you can't sue my, type of thing. So go ahead and can you explain that to people?
Sure. And that is unfortunately something that takes lots of people by surprise. I personally turn away, not my whole firm, just the people who actually make it through to speak to me personally. I turn away an average of 8 people a month who call me after something bad has happened. After a real estate deal goes sideways and you're being sued by your investors, after your kid hits somebody on the 202 with your car that you own and your high school kid spins out, after your dog bites somebody, whatever it is, once that thing has happened, you have a timing problem. And when these folks call me, they many times say, well, I'm not sure how exposed I am because my assets are in a trust. My home is in a trust. My investment account is in a trust. So I'm safe, right? And I unfortunately have to say, well, maybe, maybe not. Let's ask some more questions. So first of all, if it is a revocable living trust, which is the standard state-of-the-art estate planning trust, that is a good fit for 99% of America. Then unfortunately, as good a death planning tool as that is, it provides zero asset protection from your liabilities during your lifetime. And it's important to realize, because it is revocable, it is the same as you from the perspective of your creditors and the courts. They'll simply say, great, revoke it. You're in charge of it. Write us a check, right? So there are other forms of trusts, irrevocable trusts, and many other legal documents and entities that we create, partnerships, LLCs, corporate structures of different kinds, that can provide creditor protection and that work as a system. Unfortunately, what a lot of people want to do is go out, buy one thing, and use it as a universal cure-all, right? It's this magic penicillin pill you bought in the form of a trust that's going to do everything. I wish it worked that way, but it does not.
Right. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts in the sense that require maintenance, right? Over time, right? You have to not just set it up one time, but you have to maintain it and as well.
Yeah, there is some updating that should be done periodically on trusts. And those, I have a whole article that I wrote years ago, like, when should you update your revocable trust? Well, have your assets changed? Have the people who you named as trustees changed? Have your children's circumstances changed? Did you move? Did you get divorced? Did you name your brother-in-law as the trustee and guardian for your children, but last Thanksgiving you had a fight with him and you don't want that jerk involved anymore, and now nobody ever changed that, right? And these are normal things that happen in every family, right, Tim? People move, people die, people's relationships change. The tax law changes. So those kinds of things do require updates of documents. You can't have a 20-year-old document and think that it's going to do what you wanted it to do in most cases.
But also laws can change, right? Maybe estate taxes, other sort of gifting or inheritance.
Absolutely. So the planning that we were doing 10 years ago when we had a very low estate tax exemption is very different from what we are planning for today, right? And many of the people that I work for have been fortunate enough and successful enough to where they have that very good problem. And right now, the current estate tax exemption is about $15 million per person, or $30 million for a married couple. What's the federal estate tax? State estate tax varies from state to state. Where you and I are in Arizona, we're fortunate not to have a state estate tax. But the federal estate tax is currently has a $30 million exemption for a married couple. And what that means in plain English is that's what you can pass to your heirs without paying a single dollar in estate tax. And then the estate tax kicks in over that 30 mil for a married couple. So a lot of folks would love to have that problem. It would be a problem to have. And there are good ways around it that it can be planned for. But unless you're at that level, the estate tax is not an issue for you, thanks to the current laws.
Right. Okay. Now let's big picture again. Who needs asset protection? Right. Because if you just have, like, if you're renting a room out of your house, you're still liable for something, right? So that could happen, but it depends if you need assets to protect first, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, and this is the most common question we get, which is a variation of your question, is when should somebody start thinking about asset protection? So the short answer to your question is everybody needs asset protection, right? The question is, what is currently appropriate for you at your station in life, given your net worth, your income, what you do for a living, all of the other risk factors that you have. How many kids do you have? How many cars do you have? Do you have employees? Are you a licensed professional? All of these different things are things that an asset protection planner looks at to figure out, hey, how many exposures does this person have? But I think the more nuanced answer to your question is you need asset protection when you have something that you don't want to have to earn again or try to replace, right? And so again, that means everybody. So in fact, we talk about some of the basics. What are the most basic things in asset protection planning? Well, number one is having proper automobile liability insurance, including an umbrella policy. And anyone who is listening to this podcast who's smart enough to be listening to your show should have an umbrella of a minimum of $1 million. And that's like the bare minimum. If you are a successful person with a high net worth and a high income who's accumulating significant assets, your umbrella should probably be larger than $1 million. And that's one of the most common calls that I get, is millionaires calling me in a panic after they or a family member have been in a serious accident. And I say, well, don't you have a couple $1 million in umbrella policy? And they say, no, we've got $250,000 or $500,000 with the guy in the strip mall down the street. And I'll say, how did you get to be a 55-year-old multi-million-dollar net worth individual who doesn't have an umbrella policy? Why didn't anybody ever say this to you before, right? So lots of different things go into that question. But I said, like I said, the best answer is everybody needs asset protection. What specific tools and measures and limits you need is based on what you have to lose.
Sure. And then what's sort of your, so you specialize in your firm provides all sorts of services to different groups, but you specifically focus on clients that start at what sort of entry level net worth?
This is a really surprising answer to a lot of people, because I get asked this question a lot. So the majority of the people that I personally protect have a net worth of between $2 million and $50 million. That's the biggest group. We've got a bunch over 50. We've got a bunch over 100. We've got a couple up at the billionaire level. There are only so many of those to go around.
Sure.
But the smartest people that I work for come to me right out of med school with nothing but $300,000 in student debt, and maybe the first $50,000 or $75,000 in savings, and a leased car, and maybe they still live in an apartment or they bought their first home. And those people come to me because they have been told by somebody who is farther down the road, who has seen more life experience, and who typically has a higher net worth. Hey, go see this guy, talk to him, do what he tells you to do to start, so that you never have to take a step back, right? You never have to earn the same money twice. And wealth ideally should work like a barber chair, right? You keep ratcheting up and it never drops, hopefully. And so those are the smartest people that I work for. And when we get started with them early and start teaching them these habits of wealth and how to preserve their money, we find that their success going forward is more predictable and less dangerous to them, right? Because I have people who I started with 20 years ago who were maybe right out of med school or had been practicing for a couple of years, or a new business owner, or whatever whatever it is they do for a living. And now they have very significant multi-million-dollar net worths. And we were able to add risk management and add tools as they needed them through the course of their success that were appropriate at each stage. Does that make sense the way I'm saying that?
For sure. And and sooner the better. I particularly with physicians, that in my experience, a lot of the ones I know, we fell into this trap too for a while, which was lifestyle creep, right? You don't set up proper systems to right and start putting your income into the proper buckets, and you finally, because you've deferred for so long, right? You finally want a nice car, and you finally want to own a home, and you're right, and all of a sudden you just jumped your expenses with your income and didn't start acquiring the assets that you would want to protect. I mean, I imagine most people listening here, or most people in the U.S. anyway, their biggest asset is their house, right? And is that one of the first things people ask about, is protecting their equity?
It is. Look, most of the people that I work for, as I said, are very successful, and they have significant amounts of home equity. And as you know, for instance, here just in Arizona, we have not only whole neighborhoods, but whole zip codes of multi-million-dollar homes, right? And many of these folks that are in these homes that now have a value of $5 to $10 million in parts of Paradise Valley and Scottsdale and Arcadia, for instance, as three, kind of higher end neighborhoods. A lot of these folks bought these houses 20, 25 years ago for less than $1 million, and some of them are now worth $5 to $10 million. So they have a couple of different problems. They have an estate planning problem. We need to make sure the home is conveyed in a way where it gets the step up in basis, right? Do you your kid inheriting your $5 million home that you paid $850 for at $850 or at $5 million, right? Where should their capital gains basis be calculated? So that's one issue. And of course, the other issue is the fact that in many states, or in most states, homestead is limited to a specific dollar amount. So in Arizona, as I said, we have entire zip codes full of multi-million-dollar homes, many of which are paid off or have been bought in cash over the last 10 years. But Arizona law only protects about $400,000 of the equity in your home. So you need to put that home into a structure that will protect it from your personal and professional liability. And you need to use a tool that will allow you to keep the capital gains benefits, keep the mortgage interest deductions if you have a mortgage, and without, in many cases, making a permanent gift of the home to somebody else, right? So these are very specific, special requirements that high net worth individuals have when they're protecting your homes. And not everybody knows how to do that. Now, that happens to be one of the things that we specialize in, because so many of our clients have millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in exposed home equity. And of course, if you have more than one home, all of your second and third residences, if you're lucky enough to own a vacation home, that's completely unprotected. So we have to do some, planning for those things as well. But home equity is a big deal, and obviously it varies from state to state and community to community. But in Arizona, with the kind of people we work with, it is a very big deal.
Okay. Something I've been focused more on lately is legacy planning, which I think is similar but different, right? It's not just estate planning. It's a little bit more about training your and to maintain your heritage and to give the skills, right, and the tools to the children. So you can give them a bunch of money, but if they don't know how to how to take care of it, they're gonna. I think the statistics are like 70% of a family's wealth are gone by the first generation and 90% by the second generation. There was a study showing some of that. And
I don't know where the numbers are exactly now, but I agree with you that generally that's the way it works. And we see this with our family business owners talking about legacy. That's where we see legacy come in a lot, right? Where we have somebody who's the founder of a service business, a concrete company, an AC company, they're a builder, whatever. They own a service business. They own a chain of restaurants. And the person who started that is typically not a silver spoon type person.
Right.
They are in many cases the first generation wealth creator who was willing to put in that, 100 hours a week to build that business for decades in some cases. And then one day maybe they wake up rich, right? And this happens to a lot of people who call me. They say, hey, we've been working really hard for 20 years. And all of a sudden, our CPA and our financial advisor said, hey, you guys have this huge net worth and it's all in your own name. You better protect it. So legacy planning is very important. And as you said, it means different things. Giving people large amounts of wealth without the skill set and the resources they need to manage and protect it is a recipe for failure. Most family-owned businesses don't last past the second generation. A few make it to the third, a very small number. And I will tell you that most of the people that I deal with are first generation wealth creators. They built the money, they built the company, they made their family rich doing whatever it is they did. And they are hoping that the second generation is going to be able to maintain some of that. And some of that goes into the planning that we do, right? Sometimes we have somebody who says, hey, my kid is a financial genius. She's going to graduate with her MBA at 21. She's way ahead of the game. Give her whatever I leave to her the day that I die, because I know she's going to do something fascinating and fabulous with it. And she's going to expand this wealth and multiply it for generations. And there are other people who say, hey, my kid can't balance his checkbook, and he should certainly not be given X million dollars in a lump sum when I die. And somebody should give it to him a little bit at a time every year. Right. And so these are very personal questions that we sometimes have to ask tough questions to the parents about when we're planning for their children, including their adult children. And that's okay. Like, if there are 3 children in a family, one of them's going to be a bus driver, one of them's going to be a lawyer, and one of them's going to be a CEO, right? That's okay. But we need to plan for each of those.
Right, right. I was just wondering how much of your time is spent working with families to help structure that sort of education for their families versus the entity aspects.
The majority of it is absolutely on the entity aspect, but that means having these conversations so that the entities do what the client wants and expects them to do.
Okay.
Right. So there are some tools where we say, hey, if you need this particular kind of asset protection trust, that is something that needs to be built to spec to be safe and effective and predictable, right? There's not a lot of input that we want on building that particular tool. Whereas the estate planning side, that requires a lot more personal input from the client. Do you want this to go to your daughter? Should her husband have access to it in the event of her death, or does it skip to your grandchildren? Should your oldest child get X dollars a year, or should we simply have the trust match whatever they make on an annual basis so that they don't become trust fund baby, right? So again, lots of those conversations go in on the front end. Then on the back end, we help as well, where we may have, so in some cases for the most sophisticated clients, typically the higher net worth clients, they do things like they have family meetings on an annual or semi-annual basis where they will bring everybody together and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're invested in. These are our advisors. This is our attorney. If something happens, we want you to know who these people are. This is the investment strategy that we're using, right? But these are the things that really wealthy people do that people who are on their way or who aspire to be at that level can do with little or no expense, but don't make the time to do because, quote, they're too busy. And I guarantee you the guy who's the CEO of a big company is at least as busy as the guy who just started his first mailboxes, et cetera.
Okay.
Right. But only one of those people is going to use I'm too busy as an excuse. So I think that all of this stuff is the product of experience and education. And this is the leg up that people who have generational wealth have over people who are going to be the first generational wealth creators in their family. It's that they've been taught these things by parents and grandparents, or even if not directly taught, they know that, hey, my dad had an advisor and he had a CPA and he used to do this, he used to look at that. Not everybody in this country has that same experience. And I think that for those who didn't grow up that way, it is vitally important to have the right advisors and to never stop educating yourself, because 100%. Folks who have more money than you know these things.
Right. And they probably have more money than you because they know these things. Exactly. Right. All right, Ike. So it's similar vein, and we talked about it in the beginning. I'm wondering what most people you work with wish they would have known sooner in their life about success and wealth building.
I think I'll share the feedback I get. So number one, most people wish they had insured themselves, or say they should have been insured at the high limits that we advise them to be, or that they currently are, long before they actually were. Right. So that's one big issue. A second thing is that people need to learn to not hold assets in their own name. Right. So there is a great deal of comfort, and this is a very Western American concept we all have, right? Where we want our name stamped on everything. This is my house, and this is my car, and I own this, and I own that. And, what's the I think it was an old Rockefeller saw, own nothing, control everything, right? And so it is important that you separate your wealth from your personal and professional liability. That is the core concept behind asset protection planning. And that is something that people overlook. I think the third thing that people overlook or wish that they had known sooner is the idea that they have to consider all of their risk factors, right? So every doctor that calls me is worried about a medical malpractice claim. Every trucking company owner that's my client is worried about an accident. every manufacturer of a product is worried about a consumer safety claim, right? So everybody has this one big flashing red light on their dashboard. And then I show them a list of risk factors. And those risk factors are things, and I can send you the infographic if you want to put it up and use it as part of this, where I have it boiled down to a little, bullet pointed in infographic. But we start asking questions like, do you own a home? Do you drive a car? Do you have children that use your homes and cars? Do you have employees? Do you have professional liability because you're a licensed professional? Do you own liability generating assets like real estate, which you and I both love? I'm a real estate investor too, but being the owner of a rental home or an apartment building has a very serious amount of liability, right? We are liable not only to the tenant for their health, safety, and well-being, but to their guests, to their business invitees, which means the cable guy, the DoorDash guy, the Amazon guy, everyone who steps foot on the property, and even the damn trespassers. You and I, as real estate owners, bear that liability. So let's not be the owner, and let's separate ourselves. So those are three big things that I think people don't think about enough. And there are many others. I have a whole article called Fatal Flaws of Asset Protection Planning that I wrote 20 years ago, which still stands up and which is still... we share with clients, and we talk about some of the other things, that people do. The other thing, the opposite side, and I'll maybe end this response with this idea. The opposite side of failing to insure is relying on an insurance policy to do everything, right? So just because you have an umbrella, well, remember, the umbrella only addresses some very specific risks. With a personal liability umbrella policy, it's only going to protect you against exposures with your home or your vehicles. It's not going to protect you from an employee lawsuit claim at your business. It's not going to protect you from virtually anything else. So we need to have other kinds of insurance, and we need to have legal backstops in place to say, hey, we have insurance for this. The insurance is all we have available to you for this. And that is where you should go to look for a recovery, and you should not look beyond that, right? So one great example is doctors. Every doctor in America has the same medical malpractice policy. It's $1 million per occurrence, $3 million aggregate. But the average med mal award's $3.9 million if it goes all the way to trial. Why are lawyers suing doctors for more than the limits of their insurance? Because they have it and it's available. So let's control the risk on the front end by doing these things when we can. And of course, the last lesson is timing is everything. You can only do asset protection planning and only buy insurance before there is a problem. You cannot do it afterwards.
Right. Okay. All that's all gold, Ike. All good stuff. Thank you. So, as wrap things up here, if people would like to connect with you or learn more, where can they go? What should they do?
They can go to my website, which is Arizona Wealth Law, or azwealthlaw.com. It has background information on asset protection planning. It has articles. We have a sister site to that called proassetprotection.com that has a 20-year sort of archive of articles on everything related to asset protection, insurance, business law, and wealth preservation. So either of those, if you're in Arizona, the azwealthlaw.com is a great place to start. But either of those are good resources. And if you to find things that pertain to your lifestyle or your business, and we answer questions on everything from how many LLCs do you need to hold property to is a captive insurance company the right fit for you or not. So we cover a wide range of issues there.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Thank you very much, Ike Devji, for joining me today. Very much appreciate your insights into asset protection. And I think a lot of our viewers will probably want to learn more. I might even need you back on another episode.
Happy to do so. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.